Hello and welcome. Well, once you welcome home the arrival of your newborn, there's a process of adjusting to your new life and establishing a new sense of normal. And whilst it's expected that parents will experience exhaustion, sleep deprivation, and just general feelings of worry and concern, it's worthwhile to have an understanding of what is considered normal levels of unhappiness and what is considered a little more serious and closer to feelings of depression. So that said, we're here today to discuss a very serious topic of postnatal depression to shed some light on this very important topic. So to do so, we welcome our special guest, Heather Lindsay, a registered nurse and parenting coach who works with mothers with postnatal depression. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm very good, Rachel. How are you?
Yeah, really excited to be speaking with you on this topic, and it's a difficult subject to be able to discuss, but it's all with the view, of course, to be able to help and make a difference to anyone watching and listening. And as we've sort of found out and have been experiencing recently, mental health is becoming more frequent topic in the public. However, I guess there is still a significant stigma about admitting that if you are a mum, that you are struggling and needing to seek help. So, with mental health issues, I guess mothers aren't immune from this stigma. I'd just love to know initially, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's a mental health stigma about any condition, even depression and anxiety in general. It then gets that extra level when it comes to mums because there's that expectation that we place upon ourselves, that we get from family and friends and society that, when we get that beautiful baby home, that it's all just love, joy, sunshine and lollipops. And for some of us, 1 in 10 of us, it's the complete opposite. And then admitting that you're not enjoying it, you're not feeling connected, and it's not the way you feel it should be, then brings all that shame that maybe you're doing something wrong, that you're a bad mum, and that if you start talking about how you're feeling, that other people are just going to judge you for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just end up in this cycle, and it's really destructive to mothers and families, and the relationship that they have with their children. So it's a really hard topic to talk about, but an essential topic to talk about as well.
Couldn't agree with you anymore. And in preparing for our chat today, I was doing some research, and according to PANDA, which is Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Australia, a wonderful organisation that do incredible work. They state that more than one in 7 new mums and up to 1 in 10 new fathers experience postnatal depression. And, roughly it's about 16% of women after birth of their baby experience postnatal depression. Now, you're personally very passionate about supporting new mums, which was prompted originally by your own personal experience. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about this, and what was it that sort of motivated you to help other mums in this space?
Oh, wow. So it's quite a story. So I've got 3 kids, and I've had postnatal depression with each of them. It
Wow.
was my second child, my second daughter, who's now 6.5, almost 7, where it was really the hardest. I actually became a single mum when I was 28 weeks pregnant with her. I split with my ex-partner. And it was actually a really traumatic separation for various reasons, apart from the fact that I was pregnant. And it really set me down into depression and anxiety. And it just spiraled so much that by the end of my pregnancy, and the pregnancy developed well, and my daughter was healthy and growing inside me, but my obstetrician was really worried about my mental health. I was losing weight because I couldn't sleep. I was constantly worried and panicked, and I wasn't really doing a good job looking after my toddler at home as well. It was just the most dark place that I've ever been in before. And
Sorry,
then,
I'm just really sorry you experienced that.
yeah, oh, it was awful. I've had a lot of time to cope with it and rationalize it and process it of what it was. And as the years go on and heal, and I've done a lot of work on myself and my experiences, it is what it is. It was the past, and it doesn't change the type of mum that I am now or the connection that I have with any of my children. And the hardest bit for me was that I had a very difficult birth with her. I had a postpartum hemorrhage and became really quite sick in hospital. But I wasn't connected with her when she was born. So with my first child, it was like, oh my God, tears of joy. And I was so happy. And my postnatal depression happened later. But with my second daughter, when I held her, I felt nothing. And I whispered to my best friend at the time, who was my birth partner, and I said, I feel nothing. And I just held this baby on me and was just completely disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a very colicky baby, and she screamed for the first 9 weeks of her life, and she almost drove me insane. And I never really connected with her in those first couple of weeks. And that was really hard to go through. I was, coping with it all on my own. I had family and friends come and help me during the day, but every mum knows that if you don't have someone there at, 10 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, it falls all on you. And that's what it did to me. And there were days that I wasn't actually sure that I was going to get through it alive. And I did. And I had some wonderful friends who pulled me through it. And it wasn't until she settled down that I could start to get a little bit more on a grasp of her and her needs, and adjust to being a single mum with a
Mm-hmm.
newborn baby and a toddler.
Wow. What an experience. So how was it that you sort of brought yourself through that time? And I mean, we're going to discuss a lot of things in great detail, but is there maybe just one key point that maybe you can share with us that sort of helped you or could help anyone watching and listening in a similar scenario?
The best gift that being a single mum has given me has made me realize that I can't do it on my own. I'm not a single mum now. I have repartnered, which is wonderful, but I spent almost 7 years on my own. And if I had not actually learnt to, realize that asking for help and connecting with the people around me who love me, who want to be there to support me, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have got through it. So I sort of had to swallow my pride a bit and, trust that the people around me wouldn't judge me, and, call my friends at, 9, 10 o'clock at night and say, I need someone to come over and hold this screaming baby for me because I'm about to lose my mind, and that was okay. And my biggest takeaway to any mum who's feeling like they're trapped or, that motherhood is suffocating them is to tell someone and to just trust, one or two people in your life. You don't have to get on Facebook and tell everybody how you're feeling, but just try and trust someone and reach out, because it had made my life so much easier, and I wouldn't have gotten through it without being able to reach out.
Having a very strong sort of close support network is what sort of helps and what you suggest others to do. Is that right?
It is. We're not all blessed to have huge support networks.
Mm.
I was very lucky. I had only one or two friends that I knew I could count on. My parents lived quite a distance away, so I couldn't call them. So for those of us who don't have heaps of friends who we can contact, it's just picking one or two people, or, your partner or husband, if you have one and you trust them, is to just start small and get whatever support network you can close, and then start to branch out and start to connect with your GP and, organisations like you said. Panda is wonderful, and the Gidget Foundation, and
Mm-hmm.
there are some amazing community organisations out there to support mums.
Now, we published your article titled, if I can say my words, Worried About Being Labelled a Bad Mum for Having PND, There's No Need. Now, for someone who hasn't yet read the article, can you please tell us what it's about and just what inspired you to write it?
Well, I've always been an open book about my postnatal depression experiences, because I know that the more we talk about it, the more it normalizes it, and normalizes it as something that may happen to you and that isn't actually a reflection on your ability to parent.
Mm-hmm.
And so my motivation towards reaching that article, writing that article for you guys, was not only to share part of my experiences, but also to hopefully just realize for mums that should be no stigma attached to postnatal depression. And the more articles we have, the more podcasts, the more videos, the more people we talk about it, the more mums we'll actually reach. And then hopefully you reach that one mum who's in that really dark spot, reading her phone in the middle of the night, crying, hating herself, feeling so guilty, and just goes, oh, it's actually not my fault. And then that mum reaches out for help. And that's what I really wanted to do with the article.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a bit emotional hearing all this stuff, of course. Now, initially, there's lots to discuss on this, but I'd like to just establish from the get-go, what is postnatal depression and how can a new mum recognise the early signs?
Well, postnatal depression, which is often also called perinatal depression, so
Mm-hmm.
it's symptoms of depression and anxiety that happen either during pregnancy or up to, during that first year of life after birth.
Mm-hmm.
And so quite often, the symptoms are just like normal depression. And I say normal in inverted commas because no one's exactly normal. So it's, feeling constantly sad or crying, tired, or, fatigued, even if your baby is sleeping well. You're losing interest in things that you perhaps, were interested in before, or you don't want to connect with, your friends and your family. You might be feeling a bit withdrawn. You end up having all those, negative thoughts in your mind, thinking that you're a bad mom. It can get quite severe and you can have thoughts about harming yourself, or even your baby. So there's a huge spectrum of symptoms. And it can be from really mild that you think, oh, it's just nothing, it's just how I'm feeling, it's just a continuation of those baby blues, to something that can be really severe and severe depression and even into psychosis that needs, critical and acute care
Mm-hmm.
ASAP. So, it can be a lot of different things and a lot of different symptoms, individual for each mum as well.
Mm-hmm. So generally it's when anxiety or depression begins sometimes in the year after birth, and I guess is referred to as postnatal anxiety and or depression.
Yeah.
And you just referred to the baby blues before, so I'd love to know, the baby blues and postnatal depression the same thing, or are they different?
No, they're completely different. So
Okay, how so?
most mums experience, the baby blues. So, you give birth to this baby and you're a mess. You're physically exhausted. Your body's just given birth to a child. You might have had complications. You might still be, bleeding and having all that. You've got all these emotions going through you. You might be breastfeeding, having problems with that. Might be your first child. And it's very overwhelming. So those baby blues often set in the first few days after birth, and you might find yourself crying. You're in hospital going, I don't know why I'm so upset, and I'm so happy to have the baby, but I'm crying here. I don't know what I'm doing. And that can happen for a couple of days after birth and up to a week, but it then fades away.
So
And so then you start to feel a little bit more normal. You could still be overwhelmed by having, the new baby, and, you still got all the physical healing after birth, but that emotional stuff settles down. So if you have or are developing symptoms of postnatal depression and anxiety, the way to distinguish that from the baby blues is that it's just continuing. So it's not just, the week or so after birth.
Okay. So once a mum does establish that, what should they do if they think they have perinatal depression or anxiety then?
Well, obviously it is to talk to someone. And, for some of us, we might have a really good relationship with our GP or, an early childhood health nurse if we're, going through the care of our local health centre. But if you can't, talk to those people, you don't feel comfortable quite yet, talking to a friend or jumping online, because Panda, so the organisation you mentioned before, they actually have a helpline
Mm-hmm.
that you can call, as do the Gidget Foundation.
Yes.
And they have psychologists and everything that, you can chat with and just check in with and going, maybe there's something going on here, maybe not. And they could be reassuring or, say, no, you're okay, just keep monitoring it, or go, no, you might need to go and see your GP. And so that first step is to reach out for help, and it can be really hard to reach out for help. And so thanks to the beauty of having smartphones and the internet and social media, sometimes it could just be a search in Google, do I have postnatal depression? And just that first step of just, realizing that there might be something going on for you.
Yes. So, as a question, can it be treated? And if so, how was it treated?
Absolutely. It is a treatable and manageable condition.
Hmm.
And of course, the way it's treated is completely different depending on each individual and the severity of it. So a mild depression might be treated with, just talk therapy through counsellors or
Hmm.
psychologists.
Yep.
There are some group programs as well for mums with postnatal depression.
Great.
Some mothers might need medication and antidepressants, and that would be decided on by a GP. And then other mothers who might be much more severe, who might be referred on to psychiatrists, might need more intensive management. And there are even some inpatient mum and baby units in psychiatric hospitals that may manage them as well. So it really just depends upon the mum, the level of her postnatal depression and
Yeah.
how it's impacting her life.
Hey, wonderful. And you've mentioned with a lot of those therapy services and support services about the importance of talking about the experience and whatnot. So I'd love to know from your perspective, why is it so important to talk about our experiences with perinatal depression and anxiety?
Well, the first thing is, of course, to normalize how we're feeling. So if we talk to someone who's supportive and, helps women with postnatal depression, and they can say to you, I can understand how you're feeling, and say, "Yeah, there are other mums who feel like that, and that it's normal and it's okay for you to feel that." That just will in turn inside ourselves just make us go, okay, I can relax a little
I'm not
bit because there's
alone.
nothing wrong with me. I'm not alone. And when we normalize it and talk to professionals who are there to help us, it also gives us hope that there is that treatment, that this is not going to be how we're going to experience our entire motherhood career and our journey through being a mum with our child. So when all that happens, we then start to relax. And when we start to relax, we know that some of the symptoms of depression and anxiety don't completely disappear, but they reduce. And then once we're more relaxed and, we're comfortable in that therapeutic relationship, we then feel, more confident to take steps to look after ourselves and be on that journey towards recovery.
There is a very different energy to being completely in our own head and in our own thoughts, to then have the energy of actually speaking out what's going on in our head and in our thoughts too. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think it's just the process of actually moving some of that energy outside of your
Yeah.
body, actually. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's countless benefits to be able to speak about it. Now, in your article that we've published for you, in that you share 4 steps that anyone can take to help overcome the feelings of shame, which you've touched on at the start of the chat as well, and and general experience in postnatal depression, for mums to seek the support that they need. So I just wondered, with that, if you could maybe just go through some of those steps with us and just share what they are now, and how a mum should sort of best respond, to those.
Yeah. So again, yeah, that first thing is, of course, don't isolate yourself, reach out to anyone around you who can support you, connect with your GP, early childhood health nurses. That really is one of the first steps, but it's also one of the hardest as well. So it's easy to say just reach out, but if you're in that really dark place, and I know that dark place well, it can be really hard. And so as mothers, we're quite often taught to be self-sacrificial, our child in front of ourselves. We do everything for our child and we put ourselves backwards. And I like to reframe seeking help for how we're feeling as a mum as a thing that we do for our child, because we're quite happy to do lots of things for our child. And when we look after ourselves, we have more within ourselves to give to our child and to do the things that we need to do as a mum. So seeking help for how we're feeling isn't a selfish act. It is an act that not only looks after ourselves, but it helps us be the best mum that we can be, which helps our relationship with our child, which sets them up for the best, growth and development that they can. So if mums are having that really hard thing, oh, no one should be worrying about me, I've got to worry about the child. If you want to worry about your child, worry about you too. So I think really reframing that is a huge part of getting over that stigma, and that it being a good thing to reach out for help.
Okay, so the first one's to, just do not isolate and take that
Yeah.
first step of moving forward and actually seeking help.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the
Yeah,
second one?
absolutely. So yeah, that was the reframing of, how you are seeking help as a positive thing for your child, and for the relationship that you have with your child. There's a lot of evidence to say that children with mothers who have untreated mental health problems and who don't get the support that they need have, worse outcomes than children who have mothers who have that support.
Yes.
So if you're really having a hard time struggling, reaching out, then just do it for your child. If you can't do it for yourself, it's not a selfish act at all.
So the first one is don't isolate. The second one is reframe seeking help. The third one you've mentioned there is to use affirmations. Can you maybe just expand a little bit on this?
Yeah, so affirmations are positive statements that we say about ourselves. And, my experiences with postnatal depression, I really internalized it and went into that, oh, I'm a bad mum thing. It's all my fault. I was carrying a lot of guilt from the separation with my ex. And so you end up feeling really negative about yourself, and then negative, I was because my daughter was crying all the time, thinking, I'm a horrible mum, I can't even look after my child. And you end up just in this horrible negative cycle. And so really starting to challenge the way that you think is hard, but can be a really good way to help support you to reach out. And my favorite affirmation that I still use to this day, even though I've definitely recovered from all my PND, was that I love and accept myself exactly as I am. And so we can end up hating ourselves when we're feeling, depressed and anxious and feeling like a bad mum. And just a little bit of self-love and self-care goes a lot way to, motivating us to actually reach out for more help.
Wonderful. And it does state the affirmations was a big part of your recovery process. Is that something that you did every day?
Yes. So I used to do it every time I saw my reflection. So whether it was in the bathroom mirror, or in the mirror in the bedroom, or while I was driving, or even in the window or anything, I would just say it. And, I felt really silly doing it at first. And you don't tend to believe it at first, but the more you think it and, the more you internalize it, it is one part of the puzzle towards feeling better. And when we start to feel better and we raise that little bit of self-belief, we then often have that courage to ask for help. So it's just really wonderful to help, lift you up. And yeah, I still use it on the bad days that I have, and when I get that mummy guilt, and just, accept that I'm human like
Yes,
everybody.
they're very powerful affirmations. We've actually done a whole podcast recently on I am statements, and a big
Yep.
advocate for that. So I think it's brilliant that you've used that.
Yeah.
And the last one you mentioned is seek treatment.
Yes. So as well as reaching out, it's also participating in that treatment relationships. So that might be, talk therapy with a counsellor, psychologist, group program. It might be medication if that's something that your doctors decide that that's appropriate for you. But the whole thing about participating in treatment is that it normalizes it, and you're connecting with people who are specialists with treating mums with PND. And so then you feel like it's not a bad thing that you have PND, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Any good therapist will not only help you feel and cope with how you're feeling now, but also help you look towards the future and towards your goals for your recovery. So that also improves your mood, and then you feel less shame, it's less intense, and it helps all of it.
Yeah. And following on from that, I mean, what other things can mums do, I guess, on a daily basis to help support their recovery? And, as they're sort of working through postnatal and perinatal depression and anxiety, is there anything else that you can maybe suggest? And I think there's an article that we had actually linked to in our article that you've actually published previously about emotional management for better parenting, and just generally recovering from perinatal depression. There's lots of wonderful things that you've got in there. And obviously understanding and defining, what postnatal depression is. But, for example, things like awareness, you've got in there, and fostering connections, a lot of the wonderful things that you've already mentioned. I just wanted to see, is there anything else? You do mention about practicing gratitude. Have you found that sort of helped you throughout your experiences at all?
Absolutely. Still to this day, I do my gratitude practice, and I've even taught my children, and we sit around the dining table, naming the 3 things that we're most grateful for each day.
Oh, I love that.
Um, yeah, gratitude just, there's a lot of evidence to say that it improves the quality of our lives, and helps with our emotional and mental well-being.
Yeah.
And it just, like you said, it just gets us out of our head. And it can be the simplest of things. I'm grateful for the fact that I got out of bed and got dressed today, or I got to have a shower or eat a nice meal. And it just helps us look towards the positive things in our life. And when we're consumed in a depressed state or an anxious state, it can be really hard to find the positives. So even if you could only think of one grateful thing each day, if you add another one and another one, you'll
And they have
start
to
to
be
see.
different things. Yes.
Yeah.
They all build.
And yeah, it does build, and it's then that snowball effect, and
Yeah.
then you start to see more of the good within yourself, within your child, within your life, and then that improves your mental and emotional well-being.
And positivity breeds positivity, which I love.
It does.
Now, I just wanted to touch on another subject which you mentioned at the start of our chat today, that there's another form of mental illness that can affect women after birth, and that being postnatal psychosis, which is, which is I guess the next stage and or a much more serious version of postnatal depression. And I understand that it affects 1 to 2 women in every 1,000 after childbirth. But I just wanted to see if you just could maybe explain a little bit of the difference between that and postnatal depression.
Yeah, so postnatal depression, I guess you could say, oh, how do you say, is a bit more less intense, and psychosis is quite a severe mental health condition that needs management really quickly, and so mums might lose a bit more connection with reality. There can be things like hallucinations, hearing
Wow.
voices, really getting into severe psychiatric symptoms. They might fear that their baby is talking to them, or voices telling them to hurt their baby or hurt themselves, and it's quite a dissociation from themselves, from life, and it is an emergency that really does need to be treated ASAP. So they're the mums, and if there are mums listening to this who see those symptoms in their friends or something like this and get concerned, you need to stay with your friend, and maybe take them up to the doctor or take them to the emergency room. And these mothers really need intense support, but there is that support out for them there as well.
as well. So, just to clarify, postnatal psychosis is an extremely serious mental health condition that can be potentially life threatening, and that can put both the mother and the baby at risk. And of course, if anyone watching and listening, if you suspect you or your partner or a friend or family or anyone you know is experiencing this illness potentially, please seek help immediately. But all in all, it's been a really wonderful chat today, Heather. I'd love for you just to summarize, I guess, your key messages for anyone watching and listening today.
Well, the key is, I guess, to be open and honest with the people around you who love and support you
Hmm.
with how you're feeling, and reach out as soon as you can, as soon as you feel comfortable. And if you don't, then jump online and search, because there are hundreds of thousands of different websites, and even on Instagram, positive, accounts that normalize how you're feeling. And so you're not alone. Like you said, the statistics are PND is very common in women and in fathers, and it can be in adoptive parents as well. So it's not just mothers who give birth to their children, but adoptive parents can experience as well. So it is just about connecting and reaching out as soon as you can and as soon as you feel comfortable.
Wonderful. And if parents have got any other questions that would like to reach out to you, and also to connect through Blissed Out Mums, if you could just give us a quick overview on what Blissed Out Mums is, and how we can reach you and find you, that would be wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah. So when I did go through that horrible postnatal depression with my second child, and I was seeing a psychologist and all of that stuff, I'm a very proactive person. I'm a very impatient person, and I like to fix things really quickly. And so I actually turned to some coaching strategies in combination with my talk therapy to help get me out of that horrible dark place. And that was starting to use things like the gratitude and the affirmations, and a lot of focus on self-care and stuff. And as I dragged myself out of my PND, to the point that 8 weeks or so after seeing one of my friends, we were at a Thermomix demonstration, and she hardly recognized me because I'd gotten myself out of that dark place. And I was like, well, if I can get myself out of this dark place with, really practical strategies, then I know that I can share them with mums as well. So, and it's always nice as a mum who's been there to be able to relate to mums who are in that situation, because again, that normalizes it and takes all the guilt out of it. So yeah, so that was 6 years ago that I started Blissed Out Mums. And so have been providing online and in-person and Skype Zoom coaching to mums struggling with PND and how they're feeling as a mum. And so you can access my all my details through Facebook and Instagram by searching Blissed Out Mums. And I've got a website, which is www.blissedoutmums.com.au, and all my contact details are there. So you can send me an email, we can get online and have a chat. I'm always available. And there's never any guilt. It's a no judgment zone here, and you will always be met with open arms and as much support as you need. And if needed, I've got a whole list of practitioners that I refer mums onto.
Heather, thank you so much today for your time, sharing your experiences, all your wisdom and knowledge. Really, really grateful for this. And we'll have all of those links in the show notes. Take care, and hopefully we'll have
Thank
another
you.
opportunity in the not too distant future to have another chat. But until then, take
That would
care
be
and stay
wonderful.
safe.
Yes, absolutely. You too, and everybody listening.
Thanks, Heather. Take care. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Rachel. Bye.